Hi, folks. My name is Charlene Satcher, and I'm speaking to you today from the Winnipeg Forks. The Forks has been a traditional meeting area for thousands of years for Indigenous people. The Forks is also located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Inuak, and the Dakota people, and is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis people. Also recognizing that it is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe and the Dene people. The Forks are at the junction of the Red and the Assiniboine River. For over 6,000 years, Indigenous people gathered here to carry out trade and to make treaties. European fur traders arrived in the 1700s, followed by the Scottish, French Canadian, and Métis settlers, and tens of thousands of other newcomers. This area later was turned into a rail yard and then a junkyard. Then finally in the 1980s, a revitalization program began to transform it into this destination center that it is now. It currently has many unique pieces of outdoor art, restaurants, stores, large areas of native plants, an orchard, playgrounds, places for ceremony, as well as the Canadian Human Rights Museum. There are dozens of art installments around the Forks, and I will spend some time focusing on just a few of them today. The bison made of books plays a key component in the cell film, as well as the pregnant mother. I'll share some of the teachings that I have been gifted about them, as well as some of my own reflections. Louis Riel said that my people will sleep for 100 years, but when they awake, it will be the artists who give them their spirit back. Spending time with these pieces of art, repeatedly visiting them, these pieces that I have walked past so many times before, I'm seeing how the art is working towards revealing the truth and showing different ways towards reconciliation. In the middle of June, I had the opportunity to go for a tour led by our Indigenous Learning Team for our school division. We began our tour at this art piece by Casey Adams, Jamie Isaac, and Val Vint. It was important for us to begin at the statue of the mother, as so much of colonized history recording only focuses on the white male victors. This helped to ground us in our reflections for the day. For Cree, Ojibwe, and Métis speakers, Nimama means mother. This majestic 30-foot sculpture of a pregnant woman represents motherhood, Mother Earth, and new beginnings. She kneels to welcome the sun from the east. This gesture signals the rebirth according to the teachings of the medicine wheel. Her 7 strands of hair remind us of the 7 sacred teachings: love, respect, courage, humility, honesty, wisdom, and truth. Within those strands are the Assiniboine and Red Rivers, and between each of the strands of hair, there are various constellations, each representing a wide range of different creation stories of the many different nations in Manitoba. She faces the east, which faces the river, the giver of life. As a woman, her role is to be the protector of water and life. As I had the opportunity to learn alongside the Indigenous knowledge keepers, they shared how women are called to be protectors, and this is why they often stand in front of the protest lines. They are there to protect their way of life, the land and the water. She's wearing copper and a mirror dress to represent prosperity and strength. As the artist Casey Adams says, we can see ourselves reflected in this highly polished metal, reminding us of our duty to protect the earth. She's a towering reminder of our responsibilities to the environment, to love our relations, and as a hope for the future. A new art installment called The Eighth and Final Fire was created by the artist Jamie Isaac, as she shares the teachings of the sacred fires as told to her by her grandmother, Mary Cochrane.
The eighth and final fire can be interpreted different ways. Artist Jamie Isaac drew inspiration from her nana, Elder Mary Cochrane, who was a residential school survivor. The piece was revealed yesterday and was commissioned by the Winnipeg Foundation and the Forks. The steel structure features 8 fires aligned in a row. Jamie Isaac says the fires represent reconciliation.
And so each of the fires that you see points to a generation, a timeline in history, that we are currently the 8th fire, and that we currently are the 7th fire, and that the 8th fire will be lit when both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples work together to choose a path of collaboration, a foundation of good relationships. And I'm going to repeat that again because I think that's what we can think of reconciliation. I think it's more better to think about it as a foundation of relationships, and one built on respect and reciprocity.
There are also many other sculptures throughout the grounds of the Forks, including the monument to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. There are those who also place down their own art as a way to remember, to honor, and to push back against this horrible reality. There are also medicines that are placed throughout the Forks that people are able to use, as there are also places set up to have ceremony. One of these places is near the center of the Forks, called the Odena. This was built back in 1997 and is surrounded by different ways to observe the stars using copper markers. It also has sage, sweetgrass, cedar, and tobacco growing around the ceremonial fire pit. More recently, an Anishinaabe lodge has been built in order to teach and to hold ceremonies.
Purpose for our communities. It can be a meeting place where we gather, we can hold ceremonies, can have singing sessions, teaching sessions for our young people, but also revisiting our history.
As the former Manitoba Senator Justice Murray Sinclair stated, education is what got us here, and education is what will get us out. It's time to reimagine how we move forward with education. It's time to reimagine a new way of teaching and learning.
So I'd like to pick up on Wendell Berry's phrase, failure of imagination. The way forward to a saner, sustainable existence is to begin with the fundamental reimagining of the ethical, economic, political, and spiritual foundation on which our culture is based.
One of the reimagining that occurred was this year on July 1st, when the Forks announced that they would not be having their traditional fireworks or celebrations. They did, however, invite people to come and explore the art, the land, and the many cultures that make up this space. My children and I attended, and we learned how to make tobacco pouches, what the different colors meant, and how to offer them up in prayer. There were 2 sites available to do so, both at the Odena Circle and at the Lodge. There were also many other opportunities to engage in different activities that celebrated the unique cultures here in Winnipeg, including an Ethiopian coffee station and an El Salvadorian art station. My kids were super excited to try them out. We all worked together to make tissue paper flowers that were then used to make a traditional Ukrainian floral headdress. Another way that we could reconnect with nature in this reimagining of July 1st was that each person was gifted either a Manitoba maple or a strawberry plant if they had wanted, and they could take it to plant. They also included a marker to place next to the plant that had a QR code that would say the name of the plant in the many different languages of Manitoba. We also had the opportunity to make a pressed postcard that we could either keep or share to remember the day. This reimagining of July 1st brought together culture, healing, remembrance of the past and present harms, as well as celebrating together through our diversities. It was a refreshing change from the blind patriotism that usually makes up this day. As Eckler points out, in the 1990s, the creation of the National Environmental Act in the United States occurred, and in response, publishers mass-produced a wide range of children's environmental books. These books primarily focused on the individual acts of children and families and that they can do within their own individual sphere to save the world. I looked through many of my eco texts within my class, and I have definitely a mixed bag of resources. Many of them I rediscovered, and I have made notes for myself to use at various points throughout the school year. That I'm very excited about. And some of them I just took and tossed into the craft bin after cutting them down. I want to circle back to the bison as educator sculpture. We know that literature is so important to our learning. The bison reflects this as it's made up of over 200 Indigenous authored books. Eco-texts do have a role to play as we look at how to develop eco-kids. As I began to explore in my last blog, Learning from Children's Eco-Texts, I shared Massey's and Bradford's work that children's environmental texts help young people become the responsible and empathetic adults of tomorrow by positioning readers as eco-citizens, dedicated to sustainable development in the local sphere and the global responsibility. If this is the goal of children's eco-literature, we need to ask ourselves, as educators, if the literature supports children into making these changes in their world. This is why I went back to my classroom shelves to find out what were my books doing in terms of supporting and creating eco-citizens. I found that many of them were just about being the single hero. If you put that can in the recycling bin, climate change is solved type of a message. I have found that the greater impact, at least in my classroom, is to create a sense of wonder. As Sheila Dunlop mentions in her response to the journal article on children's eco-texts, picture books themselves cannot make children conservationists, but they can instill a sense of wonder, curiosity, and respect for the natural world, and perhaps help children consider their own role within it. By promoting a love of nature, this helps children find their sense of self within nature and share within the diverse human experience. This was definitely reflected when I asked my students to find books about taking care of our earth. The books that they pulled out were the ones that held their attention with the really interesting animal and plant facts, art activities to do with nature, and books that showed how diverse our earth truly is. I'm sharing a couple books here that I've highlighted that are big hits within our classroom, although this was filmed at our local bookstore, McNally Robinson, which is also within the Forks. I have a couple different nature books that connect with poetry. This one is one of my favorites. It's called Wonder. It's an amazing book that combines a love of nature with poetry. And within my class. These activities always result in us having so many questions, and we end up really continuing to explore and engage with the land. Our green city is another favorite, especially since I do live and work in an urban setting. Some of the questions are definitely closed questions like, how many plants do you see? But others are a lot more open-ended, like who might all live near this stream and how can we help more? Other books that instill a lot of curiosity and wonder are the ones that are those disgusting nature books, like this one, all about flowers. As you can see in the image, this one's all about a flower that's bigger than a truck tire and smells like rotting meat. Other animal books by National Geographic that talk about amazing facts that are a little bit on the gross outside are also huge hits. These ones teach children to engage in nature and inspire a love for it. From here, they continue to find ways to make positive impacts within their own communities. We can use literature to create and build the love of nature and of the earth. The other aspect of the Bison art installment that had me sit in that uncomfortable sitting that is growth is that there's only 3 books that are open. The 3 books that are open are the ones that are open to pages filled with pictures of native plants and plants that are medicine. And then all around the Bison installment, those same plants surround them. Perhaps that's the message that we need. Yes, we definitely need the books and the literature, but we also desperately need to get back to the land. These are the books that are open. In fact, these are the books that are placed at the front of the bison, in the center, in the place of strength and power. There's a third book that's open, which also has plants on one side, and on the other side has a quote by Louis Riel that says, "My people will sleep for 100 years, but when they awake, it will be the artists who give them their spirit back." A powerful exhibit is currently taking place at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights called Articulate Our Rights. This exhibit shows students art and how it can be used to speak out and be change makers, reminding the world that they are not just the future, but they are the here and the now. Another exhibit within the museum show how the youth are fighting back against climate change. They have seen the importance of the earth and all the intricacies and the wonder within it. They're fighting back as protesters and protectors. Perhaps it's through art or through local or global mobilization efforts. It also examines the social justice impact of the use and misuse of many common items, such as bags, cell phones, oil, takeout containers. I've had the opportunity to take my preteen to the museum, and we've had rich conversations that have been eye-opening in terms of their knowledge and empathy. Reflecting upon the many art exhibits, but specifically the bison sculpture, it teaches us that we need the books, the literature, but we also need the land and the arts. These are often dismissed as not needed or not important or just extras to add on. Yet these are the pieces that will help bring us healing. And as educators, we need to ensure that all students are able to access this. We need to continue to reimagine our teaching so that it can continue to inspire, help others grow, and to help ourselves grow and change. In this way, we can be like Nimama and be the protectors, and then we're able to move forward to help heal our hearts and our land.